I was teaching students that came from different parts of the world. 2/3 of the class were non-Chinese and the other third were Chinese. And I was asked to teach a course on business in China, and I said I couldn't do that because China is a huge country, 1.4 billion people, 30 plus provinces. It has various cultures in different areas. It has state-owned enterprises and private enterprises, government entities, NGOs. So teaching a course in business in China, I didn't feel that I could do. But I've always been interested in innovation. And I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And I thought I could teach a course on management of innovation in China. And that by doing so, I could address some of the misconceptions that many non-Chinese have with respect to China. So this book is an attempt to put China in a global context, in a business context, and explain how innovation in perhaps the most innovative country in the world is being managed today, and what its background is, how it got there. Okay, so chapter one is called The Rules of the Old Game. That's the name of the chapter. And I get that expression from an economist by the name of William Baumol, who was at New York University in the last decades of the 20th century. And William Baumol is a game theoretician. So he's in a very mathematical view of economics. But one of the things that he took from that game theoretic view of the world is that people optimize. They do the best that they can within a structure that is provided. And that structure is provided by society. And those are the rules of the game of society. Okay. So at its basis, if a society has a religion, has a philosophy, those form the rules of the game of that society. And then social structures are built on top of that, that base, and those also are part of the rules of the game. So I'm referring to William Baumol when I say, I talk in that first chapter about the rules of the old game. Now the old game was imperial China from Qin Shi Huangdi back in the 3rd century BC up until 1911. So the old game was quite long in China. And in that sense, China's somewhat different from other countries because you have this continuous cultural and political tradition, although of course there are different dynasties and they rise and fall and you have periods in between, but roughly speaking, it had the same rules of that old game. So I look at the rules of the old game. The old game in China's rules from a point of view of stimulating innovation, although they were not structured to stimulate innovation, in fact they did a lot better for by far the majority of that time period than the rules of other games elsewhere in the world. So China, from the Han Dynasty, starting in the 3rd century BC, right the way through until the Renaissance, so right the way through until the 15th century, was far and away the most innovative society continuously, the most innovative, long-lasting society on Earth. So if you look at the inventions of China, they far exceed the inventions of contemporary societies in other parts of the world. And so you say, well, what are the rules of the old game that stimulated that? And so this isn't my research. I'm not a historian, but I thought that was interesting to research to give a background, and that first chapter of the book gives that background. So you look at the rules of the old game, basically the religious basis of that, which is essentially Confucianism and Taoism, and then you look at the technological effects of that, and that's sort of a second theme in that first chapter, and then you look at the unraveling, and it was that unraveling that the West saw as China. because that's when the West really got to know China. I think it's important to put that into context because that forms the context to modern China. Although, of course, modern China is a modern country with a market economy that is headed by a single party with a fairly modern philosophy. Nevertheless, it has this background, so the first chapter looks at the rules of the old game.